Hey everyone, welcome to Hackathons. So this is a very first AMA with Calix. He's a 16-year-old who sold his company to Fiveable for a six-figure valuation, and he's generally into entrepreneurship. So he'll be here to answer all of your questions relating to entrepreneurship and his experience in it. So you guys can put comments in the live chat, and we will be sure to answer them. So Calix, could you tell me a little bit about yourself and who you are?
Sure. Hey everyone, I'm Calix. I'm 16 years old right now, so I just finished up my junior year in high school, going into my senior year after the summer break. I recently started and sold off my company called Hours, which is a virtual studying platform for students in high school, college, undergrad, and graduate school. And it was sold at like around a six-figure valuation by a company called Fiveable. And so now I'm working at Fiveable part-time as product manager. I'm currently interning at a venture capital firm, and I'm actually about to join another startup to help them run growth.
So could you tell us a little bit more about that startup yet, or no?
So which one? The Hours?
Ours and the new one.
Sure, yeah. So I don't have a company right now,
Yeah.
but Hours, I started it last year back in October. And so when I was working on it, or actually when I started, I actually had the idea back in May of 2020. And I just got it from I got the idea from a teammate at like this nonprofit that I was like volunteering at. It was for data visualization. And so uh, that was like an interesting experience there. I learned a lot there. But one thing that I learned was just that this productivity technique existed called Hours, where basically you would meet someone in like a video call or like a chat room or something, and you would just say, hey, okay, for the next like hour, I'm going to do these tasks, and then the other person would say, okay, I'm going to do these tasks as well, and then you put on a timer for an hour, and you just kind of work together. And at
Okay.
the end, you reflect on what happened in that hour, like, oh, I finished these tasks, but not this one, or maybe they finish all their tasks. It's kind of like that. And so I kind of got the idea of like, could I build this into a project? Because it was like, um, I don't know. I was looking for things to do. And actually, at that time, I was starting my first company called Cortexo, which I guess I can talk about later. But I tried building it, but I didn't really have the experience to do it. So I ended up dropping the project. And then when I started back up in October, I was actually working on a different startup, an ed tech startup. And then I was kind of bored that night. So I kind of just decided to work on it again because I rediscovered the idea in my notes, and then, from there, I kind of just kept working on it for the next few weeks. And then people started to actually like, I would show it to people and they would actually like it, and then they would continue to use it for weeks on end. And so that's kind of when I realized like there's something to this. And then I ended up dropping the other startup and going full time on this one. And yeah, I mean, there were a lot that happened, but the lifetime was only around 6 months before we got sold.
Oh, 6 months. Okay. So how do you like go through this entire process of like making the company like legally and making sure that it's like valid and then selling it? How does the entire process go?
Yeah. So usually in like most acquisitions, you would have your own corporation engulfing it. And if someone wants to acquire it, they would just basically buy all of the shares in your company, and then they just own 100% of it. In this case, it was different because since I actually started off as a project, I didn't initially set up a company for it. I have a personal holding company called LaunchTech LLC, which what used to be Cortexo, and I basically just kind of like put it under that. And so when it came time for after we had discussed the acquisition and all of that, it was like, okay, we could set up a corporation so you could buy it, but that's like a little bit too much work, a little too much hassle. So it was actually we were able to just sell it as like an asset from the company. So it was actually a little bit easier of a process than if we actually set up our own company. But if we ended up not getting acquired, I was going to set up a corporation for it because we were going to set up monetization in the summer. For reference, it was acquired back in May. That was right before the summer started. So if we did it, I would have spent the summer implementing monetization. And then to do that, we need to have like a business license and have an actual corporation set up. So I would have done that later on. But since it wasn't necessary, we just ended up never doing it.
Okay. Cool. So if you guys have any questions in chat, you can put them right now, and then we'll see them on our end and we can put them on the StreamYard. one question from Bobby. What does the previous company you sold that you sold, and what does it do?
Right.
I think you
So
went through that a little bit.
Ortexo, yeah, for sure. So Ortexo was the one that I sold previously. Basically, it was my first company. I basically was building a lot of projects at the time. So starting from late 2019 to early 2020, I was just building a lot of projects, and no one was using it. But I was like really passionate about and committed to like kind of just building up these ideas, getting like landing pages for them, hooking up domains, and showing them to people. And so no one really like used it, and no one really liked them. But I was kind of like, it was just really fun to push them out. And so at one point, my mom she was kind of like, oh yeah, I mean, you have all these projects out. Why don't you just set up like a corporation for it? Not because like it's super good, right? It's just you want some like legal protection, things like that. And so I was like, okay, let's do that. And so when we're filing, I kind of had like this thought of like, this is like, I had started other initiatives that also failed in the past. Like I've failed at a lot of things before this. And so I, what did I do? Okay. So basically during the filing, I kind of thought to myself, like, this is like my first like real company. Cause the others that I started, they're not like real. They're not like legally
Yeah.
structured. So I was like, okay, this is my first thing. I want to make it like special. I want to do something cool with it. And so what I ended up doing was I ended up trying to pivot the idea and basically say, hey, I don't want this to just hold my project. I want to do something with it. And I cycled through a lot of ideas. I cycled through like incubator ideas. I don't know why I would be qualified to do that. I had so many ideas I can't even remember. And in the end, I basically ended up just settling on what Ortexo was, which was basically just a holding company for consumer tech products for educational technology, specifically for students. So honestly, it was such a generic idea. It was a really great learning experience. It was like a 5-month lifespan there. I brought on a team and I kind of learned how to manage a team. And it wasn't really like a real kind of company, right? It was just kind of more of like a learning experience. But I unintentionally kind of formatted it like that. And in the end, I ended up pivoting to work on that new edtech startup. It was called One Academy with a co-founder. And I didn't really have time, or I didn't really have like everything was kind of like dying out within Vortexo. So I ended up we ended up just someone mentioned, I forgot who it was, but someone mentioned like let's just go through an acquisition. I was like, cool. Someone mentioned that to me, and I was like, okay, let's do that. And I did it. It was super small, and so it does count as my first acquisition, right? But it's nothing super impressive. I still consider that initiative to be a failure. And so I'm more than happy to talk about it. I just don't really like share it on the front lines, right? So yeah, that was my first company.
Okay, so I mean, it's always important to learn from failures because that's how you don't make those mistakes the
Right.
second time. So like, do
Yeah.
you reach out to the company like Fiveable for an acquisition, or do they reach out to you?
Yeah. So actually, with Fiveable, it's interesting. Basically, around February, we started doing cold emailing for hours. We basically just cold emailed high school teachers and asked them to refer the tool to their students. It was free. All we had to pay for was like the email CRM tool. And then, we could just send out all of these emails and just like, hey, this is what the tool is. This is the impact we've made. I think at that time we had a couple thousand users. It's just like, hey, do you guys want to use this, or would this be interesting to your students? Can you recommend it to us? And a lot of them said no, or a lot of them didn't respond, but some of them said yes, I think. And so when I was emailing them, we would send out like maybe 200 to 300 emails every day on weekdays. And so one of the teachers ended up responding to me, and he said, I'm partnered with this company called Fiveable. I'll put in a good word for you guys. Maybe you guys can partner, because I think you guys be good partners. And I thought it was a good idea, because I had known about Fiveable. I don't use Fiveable as a product because I don't take AP classes, and that's the only reason why. But I had known about them. Obviously, they're big in the student space, and I was like, okay, I'll try it. So I sent Amanda, CEO, an email, and she got back to me in like 3-4 weeks. So by then, I had already forgotten that I even asked them. And I hopped on a call with her, and I kind of pitched her the idea and kind of what I've been doing, and what our impact has been. And she really, really liked it. And we kind of stepped away from that call thinking that we could actually strike a partnership here. And the next time I got to call with them was actually like 3 weeks later, because they were like really busy. And I called with their head of product, and it was just like, oh, what are the numbers? What are the metrics? He was super nice. He actually used to be my manager, and then he ended up having to leave the company. But I mean, he was great. And so call with him, and then I actually got on another call with Amanda like a week after, and then kind of just like proposed an acquisition. She was kind of like, hey, I know we wanted to partner, but we'd actually just rather acquire you because we want to work with you so closely that it just makes sense if you just join us instead of us staying separate. So in a way, yes, I reached out to them, but no, I didn't propose it. I asked for a partnership, and then they kind of like seen that as an acquisition. And only later on, I was able to figure out that the reason why they wanted an acquisition is because they wanted to build something exactly like ours, actually, like maybe back in 2020, of summer 2020. And they never ended up doing it because they didn't have the time, resources, or vision to do it. And Fiveable, us at Fiveable, our motto is basically just built by students for students. And obviously, full-time staff can't be students, so that's why there's so many paid interns. And so this was just like a really good example of built by students for students. And so that's like a big reason why that kind of happened. So I would say it's very, very lucky.
Okay, nice. So we have a question from Ion. How did you manage school and all these companies together?
Sure. So I am homeschooled. So I'm actually not in like a public school or a private school. And I'm homeschooled, but it's not like traditional where it's like my parents teach me. It's basically just like online school. So I take the same classes as everyone else. I can take honors classes, I can take AP classes. And I have teachers, but they're all kind of just like virtual. So my teachers, they might live like on the other side of the state, the other side of the country, different time zones, things like that. And it's very asynchronous type of schooling where it's just like they give you all of the work and there's barely any live classes. So each class only has one live class per week and it's optional. So actually, I didn't attend a single class in my junior year. And so I'm very lucky to be in that situation. And I started in computer science in like freshman year. So if I was in a publicly enrolled school and then I was starting in freshman year, I would definitely not be here because I would not have the time. Because of this, I started in this online schooling program in 6th grade. And so I got used to the program. And then when I hit freshman year, I was able to kind of get through school on a daily basis, like 1 to 2 hours, and then just learn everything that I wanted to learn about computer science for the rest of the day. And it's not for everyone, right? Like I have friends in the same program who take like 7 to 8 hours a day, just like everyone else, to work on school, and their grades are like way better than mine, but it's just kind of like whatever you want. It's very flexible. So I think that's the reason why I'm able to manage school in these companies. And so I'm very lucky for that as well.
So do you like see any more like benefit over like doing online school versus like traditional schooling?
Yeah, for sure. You learn a lot about independence. You have more time. But at the same time, you have to learn how to manage that time correctly and not just play video games all day because that can be tempting. So you'll learn about time management as well. But I think the biggest parts where the biggest drawbacks are that it is harder because you basically have to learn it all yourself. They gave you the material and they don't have a teacher teaching you. You can take you can watch their videos, you can do all that, you can read all their documents. But if you actually want to talk to your teacher, they have to manage like 2 to 3 times the amount of students that they usually do because it's online. So you have to schedule like 2 days in advance, and maybe you'll get like a 15 to 20-minute window. And so it is harder, I will say, than regular school. I can't say that for sure, but I'm just going to assume.
Yeah.
But the bigger one is just like the social experience is non-existent. And so if you want to correctly your social skills, you have to actually go out and do it, which is what I did. One of my classmates, they don't really know how to talk to people properly. And so that can be an issue. So it has its like trade-off, but if you can do it right, it's definitely the right move.
Okay, got it. And here's another related question by Ion. Do you plan on going to college?
I do, yeah, I do. What I'm happy about is that it's not really like do or die, I guess. I mean, if you're in the Bay Area or just anywhere else, right? Like I feel like a lot of people who are really competitive on getting to college, it's kind of like do or die. If you don't do it now, or you don't get into a good school now, like it's just gonna like be over. Like that's not really the case, obviously. But even if that were the case, like for me, it's just kind of like I'm very lucky that these past experiences make me very okay with just taking a gap year or skipping altogether. But I do want to go to college, but it would just be like I would hopefully get into like a pretty good university. And so yeah, I'm working on college applications right now, person speaking, all that kind of stuff. And I don't know anything about it. I actually obviously my extracurriculars list would be pretty good, but then my academics like not
Yeah.
bad, not great, right? So yeah, but I do plan on going. So that's taking up
Yeah.
a bit of my time nowadays.
Is like in-person college or is it just like online college? Like you're
I
like
would definitely I would definitely go for in person because, to be honest, I wouldn't go to university for the education. I would just go for the experience, the network, and yeah, just those two things. I think those are really important, and those are things that you can really like. It's really hard to get those in places other than college.
okay. We have a question from Miney and Emma. But how do you get started in entrepreneurship? Like, what was the entire process like?
Yeah, I mean, I was not in entrepreneurship my whole life. Like, I know a lot of people, like a lot of my peers, they're running pretty big companies as well. I mean,
Mhm.
they started with entrepreneurship and then they just decided to go into tech. I was in tech and then I decided to go into entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And my start was really just Ortexo, just like kind of that whole filing process. I know a lot of people who take routes similar to me. Like I can see like a little bit of a trend. It's not like generalizing, but just amongst the people that I know and in my network, um, it's basically the people who are from a different niche industry and then they go into entrepreneurship. It's usually just like an on accident, like I stumbled in here, I didn't mean to be here, but I am. And that was kind of like me, like just like starting a company. Like I didn't really intend for that to happen.
Mhm.
That wasn't like a goal of mine, but I ended up getting into it anyways. For the people who start out as like, oh, I love entrepreneurship, and then I'm just gonna like do whatever it takes to become a really good entrepreneur, and a lot of people into tech, they're the people that's like, hey, you gotta wake up at 6 a.m. and then you gotta take cold showers and you gotta like eat only lettuce or something. I don't know. So I think like that is a trend that I've seen, and I'm not saying like one is better than the other, but that's just kind of like the way that different people, I would say, at least around our age, get into it. I
Okay.
think as you get older, people don't really do it on purpose. They kind of just like, oh, I find this kind of interesting, I'm gonna get into it. That's what I've seen for the people who I've met in their like 20s.
Oh, sorry about that. My laptop is disconnected. So
Okay.
we have a question to Sci Overflow. How did you get to the acquisition process as a 16-year-old working in a very age-focused, I think they're trying to say industry?
Very age focused industry. Industry. Okay. That makes sense. I mean, like making a big business deal with minors in general is very difficult, right? So I'm very like honestly, a lot of these processes I'm like very very lucky, very blessed and things like that. And so with Fiveable specifically, I mean they're a student run company, and so Amanda, the CEO, she knows a lot about kind of like how to deal, how to handle, and how to communicate with students and young people in general, because she used to be a teacher herself. And so she was very accommodating throughout the whole process. She was very friendly throughout the whole process. She made sure that my interests were at the forefront of this entire deal.
Mhm.
And so, they wanted this acquisition a lot. I wanted this acquisition a lot. And so it's just kind of like, how well are you going to work with each other? So they jumped through a lot of hoops. To make this thing work. They had we had to talk with a lot of lawyers to make sure this thing worked. And I later found out like even some of their board members that I've been able to meet and talk with, they're great people. Even they had to hop in and they had to figure out how it's going to work. Even though like a lot of people think like board members and board directors, they don't do any work. I mean, at least at Fiveable, they do a lot of work. And so that was really actually validating to see just kind of like these people who sold like really, really like, you know, what was it, 8-figure companies, like
Yeah.
they're even jumping in to help me out. And so, yeah, I mean, they're like, if I were to do it with any other company, maybe it would be a little better, but I feel like everyone has, all entrepreneurs, they have like some sort of soft spot for like young people. And so I would actually say it's like, it might be even a little bit easier, but then some of them will they'll try and like rip you off, if you think you're naive enough. So yeah, with me, with Fiveable, it was pretty lucky.
Okay. And then I think there's also a related question to that. What was it like after the acquisition? Were your opinions taken into account with big teams around you?
Right. Yeah. So I think there's like two parts to this question where it's like, what was it like for me working at Fiveable, which I'm still doing, and then what was it like kind of like on my own? So like with Fiveable, I'm a product manager, and so I basically like I don't work on the Fiveable product specifically. I basically just run hours because like I don't know what else, like what else I'd be better at doing. So I basically just run. There's like a division for hours. So I run my own team. I guess they gave me the CEO title as well, but I don't really care too much about that one. And so I have my own team, 4 engineers, and then we're actually about to hire for social media interns, and some other people, in maybe a week or two. So those applications will be open. But yeah, so I run my own team, and it's been really, really great because I I report to Amanda, and then I work with a lot with the head of engineering and some of the Fiveable leadership. And honestly, I mean, they've been great because they've been super, super cautious to make sure that, not cautious, but like they've been super understanding to make sure they don't step on my toes, they don't overrule me, because I technically still have final say in like everything relating to hours. And so they've been very gracious with their help and their advice. And honestly, the biggest thing when I was talking with Amanda about I want my experience to look like, I was very clear that I want to learn as much as possible from being here. And this was like a good way of doing so, just kind of learning from Amanda, learning from all of the leadership, learning from their board members and their investors and things like that. And they've really, really helped me grow in that way. I mean, in outside of Fiveable, it's definitely been like a very interesting process, and that's actually kind of like what I've been writing about, in terms of like just like the aftermath of the acquisition. Because a lot of people, they have like a lot of founders who sell off their companies. It's kind of like a little bit notorious, to have, I don't know how to phrase this. It's like it's a little bit, they're a little notorious to like have like bad side effects, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think I don't know if it was rumored or if it was reported, but like the founder of Minecraft, when they sold it to Microsoft, I think I might have gotten this wrong, but he had like a 6-month depression period after that, and he was like kind of like, because it's like you work on it so much and you put in a lot of your time and it's kind of like sold off, and it's like it's a mutual deal, right? But obviously it's gonna be a little bit tough. So mine wasn't too bad because I only worked on it for 6 months, not even over a year. But I kind of had like feeling of like, I don't know what I'm gonna do now. Like, what should I do now? And so that was a little bit tough. And I did write like blog posts about it. I started writing, I started reading, I started networking a lot. And then eventually, I decided to kind of reboot up what I was doing in my career because I don't really have the time anymore, or I don't know if I should spend my time to actually start on another initiative, to kind of go out and seek out new opportunities. So I, leveraged some of the connections I had at Fiveable, and then I ended up joining as a venture capital intern at one of the venture capital firms that is investing in Fiveable. And I'm about to start running growth at this Y Combinator startup. So it's like using kind of the credibility that I was able to build up from this acquisition and kind of utilize it to get new opportunities. I think that was a really good growing point that happened it's been like the last 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay. So are you like planning on continuing hours, or do you like plan on leaving and then like starting a new company like later on in your career?
Right. I mean, I'm working on hours at Fiveable, so as long as I work at Fiveable, I'll be working on hours. But obviously, at some point, I'm gonna leave it up to someone else because you need like a new set of eyes at some point, and
Mhm.
I'm not always gonna have the best leader over it. And so I'm excited to see who would ever take up that role, take up my role in that. But yeah, I mean, I definitely want to start another company in the future. I don't know how it would go. I don't know what it'd be in. I mean, ed tech and consumer is something I'm really, really passionate about, something I specialize a little bit more in than other industries. But I don't really know yet. I might aim to try and start that new idea in maybe my freshman year of college or maybe a little bit after that. But to be honest, I'm just going to sit and kind of wait, see what happens.
Okay. And it's like a question of mine, but did you participate in like other hackathons in the past?
Yeah, I did. So I actually my general progression was I started in programming and I got into data science and machine learning, and then I kind of 180 pivoted into web development.
Mhm.
And around that time, during that pivot, I actually ended up just um, trying to go to hackathons. So the first hackathon I went to was because of a friend. My friend was basically like, "Oh, organizing this hackathon." Back when everything was still in person, right? So those were the good times, right? I
Mhm.
He was organizing this hackathon. He's like, "Hey, you should come and join." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, sure." But like, what's gonna happen? He's like, "Okay, well, you can like do this, do this, do this." But all I heard was kind of like, "Okay, you get to go there. You stay up all night. We have like a bunch of food and like free stuff for you." And I was like, "Okay, cool. This sounds like a good deal." And so it's at Oracle. And so I basically I went. Um, I ended up not sticking to the theme or the prompt at all. I actually ended up building this facial recognition thing, and it had nothing to do with the prompt. So obviously I couldn't win, but they gave me like a special mention. And that was my first hackathon. That was really, really fun. And so I kept doing hackathons since then,
Mhm.
and I lost all of them. I lost a lot of them actually. I even attended some adult hackathons, and adult hackathons are super intense because it's like you're literally competing against like software engineers like Facebook.
Yeah.
So those crazy. In November 2019, I attended a hackathon called Atoms and Bits. It was in San Francisco, and I attended, and it was an entrepreneurship based hackathon. So all projects that you submit have to have like a business plan behind it, or like some way you're gonna make money. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so I before that hackathon, I actually had an idea of building this web animation library, and it was basically because I was designing my second personal website. So I had a personal website. I was doing it again. And I wanted to have like this background animation to it that would be like interactive, but I didn't want to code it out, right? I just wanted to something to like pop on my site, and if they wanted credits, I would give them credits. Um, and basically, I was like, okay, you know what? I know I can build this. I think I can build this. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to this hackathon, and I'll do it another time, or I'll do it after.
Yeah.
And what even makes hackathon sweeter was kind of like, okay, I was in a like this competition called Cyber Patriot, and I didn't really care that much about the competition, but the team that I was with, I actually had the hackathon and then our quarterfinals on the same weekend. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna stick to this hackathon. I don't want to go to this thing. And then they were like, trying to convince me not to, and they were like trying to like make me doubt, like, oh yeah, it's not gonna work out. You're gonna fail. Like you're not gonna do the hackathon well. And I was like, you know what? It's okay. I went to the hackathon expecting not to build anything, and then when I actually we ended up actually winning that hackathon. I met some old friends there. They helped me come up with a business plan. I built the whole thing. We ended up winning first place in best website. We got like 4 VR sensors, 4 Amazon Alexas, and like we got like a Nintendo Switch, which was pretty sick. And so yeah, that was the hackathon that I my only hackathon victory. After that, or shortly after that, there was like the lockdown. So I'm glad I got one hackathon win after that. But yeah, I mean the project I ended up working on, I ended up working on after, and it's called NOJS, and I still display it on my site. And I mean that was a really great learning project. So yeah, I mean I have a lot of hackathon stories. So that's probably like that's one.
So what is the project that you do when, like, what is it, the project that won, what does it do?
So Node.js, it's basically an open source web animation library. It's basically a bunch of, so there are a lot of web animation libraries. There's Mo.js, there's Anime.js, and there's a lot. But those basically provide you the tools to create your own animations. And the way I kind of solved everything was, I mean, those are great packages. I mean, those are great tools to use. But at the time when I was building my site, I was like, I don't want to build something. I don't want to craft something new. I don't want to create, I guess. Just want to see what I want and then put it in. And so basically it's just a bunch of pre-built animations that you can customize and then just drop into your website with like 2 lines of code, I think, 2, 3, something like that. And so that's kind of like that was the whole idea behind it. Just like, hey, if you want something, just come here and get it. It's like, I don't know what I want. It's like, I don't know what I want. I know what I don't want. And so if you show me, I might find something that I want. So it's just kind of like that.
Okay, got it. And I think we have a last question from Rohan. How do you come up with your ideas?
Yeah. It's like it's not like controversial, but it's like might be a little bit like of an interesting perspective. But most good ideas don't really come up when you need to come up with it. Or like, it's like, hey, okay, I need an idea. I'm going to sit here until I get one. The best ideas just come from things that like you would never expect. I mean, hours, I didn't expect to come, like, that wasn't even my idea. It was my idea, but like not the core of it. It's still like a productivity technique that is not that popular and it's not like a famously published one. But it's something that, you know, people have written a few blog posts about. Node.js, it was just came from a problem. That's always like a common one, like solve your own problems. I think that's a great model to follow when you're coming up with ideas. I built another project called MPO Core during my time at Ortexo. We ended up, these were such small numbers. I used to think these were big numbers, but we got like around 500 nonprofits on that platform.
Oh, wow.
That came up basically, I actually wanted to practice my React.js skills. And so I was like, okay, you know what, maybe I can build this stupid little thing. And then it ended up turning out. So like, I feel like a lot of the ideas that turned out well were ideas that I never thought would turn out well. And then the ideas that I thought would turn out well, no one has ever heard of because they died out before anyone could even see it. So I don't know. I think like if people have, I hate the word, but it's the perfect word for this. It's like serendipity, just like you have to be patient and just wait for something to come to you. I don't like using that word, but it's a good word to describe it.
Okay. So is it like, did you have these problems in the past that you came up with ideas when you were not thinking about them, or there was like complete random?
Yeah, I think I think these ideas started to come to me a little bit more when I started to open up my perspective. There wasn't really like a huge mindset change. It's just the fact that the more experience and industries that you immerse yourself in, more issues and more ideas are going to be floating around there. And so the more you can expose yourself, the more likely you're going to get some sort of interesting idea to either build or at least talk about or think about. A lot of ideas actually that you get those ideas and then you just have to sit and wait on them. And then maybe it'll make sense in the future. So that was exactly like ours. Like I had the idea and then I only started building it like 5-6 months later.
Okay, got it. So I think that's all for questions. Thank you so much for joining with us today. It was a pleasure having you. And thank you for all our participants for joining the live stream. And we hope to see you guys in the hackathon soon. All right, see you guys. Bye-bye.